Hey everybody, Tim from Workshop 12 here. Today we're going to go through what it takes to do the Brainiac install into the dashboard of an FRS BRZ Toyota 86. So we're going to walk through what it takes to disassemble the dashboard, get everything set up, and then put everything back into place. So to start off with, we're going to do essentially the simple sort of thing like we would be doing for any kind of a stereo install. I'm just going to protect a bit of the dash here, and we're going to pop out this plastic. So this plastic is just a snap in place around the stereo, so you just gotta kind of have to wiggle and pop this out. And we've got our plastic, and put that to the side. So that exposes our stereo here, that we can start to pull that out of the system. The other things that we're going to need to do is pull off some of this other pieces of trim here. So the center piece, we have to kind of shift it back in order to be able to pull out some of these side bolsters. So to get started with that, a simple thing to start off, and we're going to disassemble. We're going to take the shift knob off. It makes it easier to be able to pull everything up here. So we'll unscrew that and set it to the side. That's a lot of thread. There it goes. Okay, now to get it out here, basically you're going to reach down into this plastic, and you're going to kind of pull and pop up underneath the plastic. So we're just going to put some pressure on it, and we see it pop. So that's going to kind of, again, just kind of wiggle it through, pop it off here. You'll see that the shift boot will actually pull out over top of the shifter, but what you're going to want to watch for is just on the back here, we've got a plug for our switches, so we're going to want to disconnect that as well. So just take a look for the release on it. Pull our shifter right off, and we will get this free here. A little clip is involved, and we can put this to the side as well. So what that's going to do is it's going to expose two screws that are down in here, and those screws are ones that we're going to have to disassemble to be able to pull this back. The other thing that you're going to want to do is in the kind of the cup holder area here, there's a little under tray, little piece of rubber that you're going to want to pull up. This comes up and out of the center console, and it's going to expose two 10mm connectors, but they also have a Phillips head on them as well. So I'm going to use my gigantic Phillips screwdriver here, and we'll pull these guys out, and we'll also take out those screws as well. Set them to the side. Use a smaller Phillips head, and we'll get these guys out here. Now that makes our center area here, it breaks it free so that we can actually move and wiggle it around. We're going to need that for when we need to pull these guys back and out. So if I can pull that, that'll actually allow me to give some space for these to come out. Now down on the sides here, you'll see that there's a couple little connecting pieces. They're just in there with some snaps. So we're going to disconnect those as well. So they pop off. So you're going to take those off on both sides. Again, they're just in with little pressure clips to be able to pull them out. And then we're able to essentially pull this back. After, actually, first step is we want to pull out the engine start-stop area here. So again, this one's going to be just take a little bit of pressure and a little bit of coaxing to be able to pull it out. You can take out the little rubber stop here too. What the fuck? So I can get it to pop on this side, but not on the other side.
This is great TV. We've always found this so easy before.
Like why? What's... Okay, now we've got our side pieces out on the bottom. We cut away when we're filming here, because the next step is you need to pull out this push to start, this little tray at the bottom. and son of a bitch, it can be in there tight. So usually this side, if you grab it and you pull and wiggle, it'll kind of pop loose. But there's a little lip on the bottom of your climate control that's holding it from coming out. So you really have to put a lot of pressure down on it, kind of get your fingers into the little tray, pushing down and pulling out. If you have somebody else to put a little bit of weight on here, this car before, we snapped it, popped right out, and other times it can be a bitch to pull out. So essentially, you're going to pull out your bottom tray here. As you can see, there's a couple of connectors. You got your connector for your push to start, and those different things on here. So we're just going to disconnect these so that we can pull and get this out of the way. Here, it's got a couple clips on it. And we can take this godforsaken piece and put it to the side. So that was one of the trickiest things. Now, the reason why we're wanting to do that is that there's 2 screws here. Now, what that means is that when we undo those, we can pull this piece back. And the reason why we need to pull this piece back is so we can get these side bolsters off. These side bolsters will not come. As you see, we've got a lip here. This is what's sitting behind that push to start. So we can't get these out unless we pull that push to start part out of here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove these 2 screws down here so we can slide the center console back. So this allows us to then shift this piece, and it gives us enough leeway to then remove these side pieces. So these side pieces are in now with a couple of screws. So there's one at the top here on each side. So we'll pull those out. And that will loosen these up enough that we can just kind of pull straight back, and these will kind of pop. So you can hear the pop out of there. And by being able to pull this back, it allows us to kind of wiggle these free and get them out of here. That's one. Do the same thing on the driver's side here. Wiggle your piece out of the way, and you can pull that out as well. So that gives us exposure for everything that we need to pull out. Pulling out our stereo, pulling out our climate control. Climate control is in here with a couple of screws that's holding it in place. And then we've got essentially 4 10 mil spots for the stereo. So we're going to take out the climate control first here. So I'll remove these screws on the sides. And on the back of our climate control unit, we can just kind of pop it out. It's on like pressure clips. Just kind of rock it here. And that gives us access to the back for the climate control. Now, depending on how your wiring is running in here, there's not a lot of slack on these wires. So there's the first one that we have in here that doesn't have a ton of slack, and the way this is run is coming into the essentially the hazard switch area on the back. And then there's others going straight into the back of the climate control themselves. So we'll maybe try to release the hazard switch one to start off with. Got it loose, and then there's 2 plugs here as well. 1 and 2. Now we can put our climate control to the side. Now these 3 plugs that we have here are all going to be ones that we're going to plug into the back of the FRS climate control unit that's part of the Brainiac solution. So these just plug in, OEM snaps straight into the back, and then you've got your climate control good to go. Last part here is taking out our stereo. So we'll go and get our 10 mils, loosen them up. And then bring them out. Try not to drop your 10 mil bolts back in behind everything, because it is an absolute pain to try to find them afterwards.
Sounded like you dropped
No, I got it. Got it. Got them. then pull these out. I'll grab that last 10 mil, and then as usual, you've got just like a standard stereo install. You're going to unclip the different connections on the back of the stereo here. And we've got our stereo in. Now, of course, if you're doing your wiring in here, this is where you're going to use your aftermarket stereo harness to be able to plug in your wiring harness to do any of the audio that you want with your tablet. We have videos posted online of what that wiring looks like. But now you have everything disassembled out of your dashboard. So this is where you would now be plugging in your climate control replacement unit, your wiring harness to get everything all prepared, because at the end of the day you're really only going to need your USB connection and your audio connection coming out of it when we're going to put the tablet in, and then we've got a connector as well for a replacement hazard switch as well. So next up, what we're going to take a look at is how we're going to assemble the 3 pieces of the Brainiac kit to hold the tablet in place, and then we'll come back in and we'll do the reverse to be able to install it into the car. Okay, so here is the FRS BRZ 86 kit, all the different pieces. So you're going to get your RCA jack that's in here. You've got your hazard module, so this is being able to make sure that it's dealing with the little passenger airbag light that's in there and being able to switch on and off your hazards. We've got our climate control replacement, takes the factory plugs and a USB cable. And then we've got our Mark 1.5 electronics here, which plugs up into the tablet and straight into the harness of your car. It's got an extra little charge port on the back here too if you want to run an extra line to be able to charge your phone in the vehicle. And then we've got our Mark II kit itself here. So it comes in 2 pieces. We've got our magnetic faceplate. So in this case, I've primed this, sanded and primed this one, so it comes in a natural plastic white. And then we've got the rear frame kit here. So this all comes pre-assembled. It's got little magnets down into each of the different corners that catch with the front faceplate, and the hazard switch is plugged in there as well, so you're able to then plug in your connector into the back once we're into the vehicle. So that gives you all of your pieces for the actual kit itself. Really, all you're going to do after installing it in the car is you're going to take your tablet, you're going to snap it into place in here. You've got your ports for the 2 plugs for the micro USB and the RCA jacks that come into the bottom there. And then essentially once it's installed, you're just going to snap clip the plastic face onto the front of it. So that's all the pieces to the kit. If we take a look here and we pull the tablet out, we do have a couple of little loops down at the bottom here. If you can see them on camera there. Essentially those are so you can run some little zip ties in to be able to hold the cables in here. So one of the last things that you want to have is having this all installed and having your RCA and your micro USB cable drop down in behind the dash, and then you got to take everything apart. So being able to do some little zip ties that don't allow it to slide back down into the dash is a nice little addition that we kind of put on there to make sure that everything works great. So those are the pieces of the kit. Again, there's nothing for you really to assemble other than putting it into the vehicle. Alright, so we're back into the vehicle here and we've got our kit with us. So the first things that we're going to do for our installation is being able to set up our electronics. So essentially we're going to pop in our hazard switch, a little dongle here. We're going to clip it straight onto the hazard switch plug, and we're also going to take our climate control, plug those plugs into here. And then we're going to take that USB cable and we're going to run it up to our Mark 1 electronics. So we've got our Mark 1 electronics box up here in the front with our different ports on it, and we're going to plug that into there. So typically, depending on how much space you have back in here, you can zip tie this unit down, just to make sure that it doesn't rattle around in here. Just for the sake of this installation, we're just going to push it back up into the dash just to show everything working here. So we'll push our climate control back up in, and we'll push our hazard back in. We've got those just pushed into the dash here. So this is all going back into the cavity that it was there before with the climate control, and then we can start to actually reinstall our kit itself. So if we take our faceplate off here, because we're not going to need that quite yet, and we'll set it to the side here, and we're going to take the plastics that we had. Now what we're usually going to do is we're going to take the wire for the charge, and we're going to route it up through here and plug it in, let dangle out. We can use our zip ties to hold it in place like we talked about before. And then we're also able to take our RCA jack up here, headphone jack, and kind of filter it through here. I'm not going to do this for the installation just for the sake of time. And then we're going to take our little hazard switch on the back here, and we're going to take the plug from it and plug it into our hazard switch. So we make those different connections in behind the dashboard here. Now, the plastic lines up against each of the different mounting holes. So from 3D scanning the dashboard, we have the exact mounting spots that we need. So it's going to use the 2 screws that were used for your climb control, and it's going to use the 4 bolts that were used to hold your pre-existing stereo in place. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put those screws and bolts back into the dashboard here. So we'll start with the 2 at the bottom. And then we'll do the 4 bolts at the top. So these are the 10 mils that came out from the stereo. I'm just going to snug tight these in here. Got our 4 spots. We'll do the top 2 first, and then we'll do the bottom 2. So at this point, you'll have your hazard plug plugged in, you'll have your RCA and your charge port kind of dangling out here so you can use them to plug into your tablet, and you're basically set to start reassembling the rest of the dashboard. So the next pieces that we're going to need to put back on here are our side bolsters that we have for each of the different sides. So we've got our driver's side and our passenger side. You're probably going to have to pull your center console back a little bit just to get these in. They kind of take specific lining up to have them all go back in. Oh, there it goes. So once those are pushed in, they take a screw up on the top. We'll do the other side as well. Push him in there. Snugs back in, take our screw, it's got him secured. Now we can take our center section here and get it slid back in place. So your screws here and screws here are going to line up. So we'll just put the 2 ones back in the front here. And then you have 2 more to go down in here. We're just not going to put those in for the time being, just for time. We've got our start stop. You're going to plug your 2 plugs back into here, and then you're going to slide it back into the dashboard. So I'll just add the clips in here. I'm going to then push this back in. And you should hear it clip when it goes and pushes in. There we hear our little snaps. Got it all set back into the dashboard there. So the last bit on this is you've got your magnetic face plate, and you're going to slide that back in and put it on each of the different mounting points, and you've got all of your different positions that line up with the dashboard to hold it in place. Magnets hold it on there so it won't come off, nice and sturdy, won't slide back and forth, and that's the installation into the dashboard. So you're typically going to take your tablet, you're going to take your 2 cables, plug them into the bottom here, you're going to slide them back in, push them snugly and firmly back into the cradle to be able to have it hold it there, and then you've got your final piece of putting your magnets over top, and you've got your dash totally installed. So that is what's needed to be able to put everything back together. You know, your finishing touches are being able to take your hook up your plugs for your shift knob, slide them back in, snap them, clip them down, put on your shift knob, and your installation is complete. So that gets everything ready for you. If you ever need access to that tablet, you can just pop your faceplate off and you're good to go.